Would you give away your only meal to a stranger? Little did Sophia know that one small act of kindness would change her life forever. Sophia Reyes tightened her grip on the paper bag holding her lunch as she walked through the crowded park. The midday sun cast long shadows and a cool breeze rustled the leaves overhead. Her worn shoes shuffled against the cracked pavement, each step reminding her of the long walk home after school. But Sophia's attention was caught by a man sitting alone on a weathered bench near the fountain. His clothes were tattered, his hair unkempt, and his beard overgrown. Yet his piercing blue eyes seemed out of place in that rugged face. Those eyes held a quiet dignity, something she had never seen in the other homeless people around the neighborhood. Without much thought, Sophia's feet moved toward him. She pulled out half of her peanut butter sandwich, the only food she had for the day, and hesitated for a moment. Her stomach grumbled, but she ignored it. "Sir," she spoke softly, her voice barely louder than the rustling leaves. "Would you like this?" "You look hungry." The man looked up, surprise flashing in his eyes. "This is your lunch, isn't it?" His voice was deep but gentle. "It's okay," Sophia lied, offering a shy smile. "I'm not that hungry." The man hesitated, then accepted the sandwich with a slight nod. "Thank you. What's your name?" "Sophia. Sophia Reyes." She glanced around nervously. "I live over there." She gestured toward a row of dilapidated apartment buildings. "With my grandmother, Sophia Reyes." The man repeated her name as if committing it to memory. I'm Alexander." He didn't offer a last name. Sophia watched as he took a careful bite of the sandwich, chewing slowly, as though savoring each morsel. "It's just peanut butter," she explained, almost embarrassed. "But it's all we had left this week." Alexander's eyes softened. Sometimes, the simplest things are the most precious. Sophia didn't know what to say, so she stood there awkwardly for a moment, but then the distant sound of sirens broke the silence. Alexander's demeanor changed. He stood up quickly, pocketing the rest of the sandwich. I should go," he murmured, his gaze shifting around. "Thank you, Sophia." "You're welcome," she whispered, watching as he walked away, his figure blending into the busy streets. That night, as Sophia returned to her tiny apartment, she couldn't help but think about the strange man with the blue eyes. Something about him seemed different. 3 days later, as Sophia returned from school, she was startled to see a silver Rolls-Royce parked in front of her rundown building. The gleaming car stood out like a diamond in a coal mine. A well-dressed man in an elegant suit was talking to her neighbors, and when he noticed Sophia, he smiled and approached. "Are you Sophia Reyes?" he asked with a polite formality. Sophia hesitated. "Yes. Who are you?" "My name is Thomas Caldwell," he introduced himself. "I'm an attorney representing Mr. Alexander Grant." "He would like to speak with you and your legal guardian." Sophia's heart pounded in her chest. "I don't have parents. I live with my grandmother, but she's in the hospital." Thomas looked surprised but maintained his composure. "I see. Is there an adult responsible for you at this time?" "Mrs. Clara Morrison, from apartment 3B, Sophia answered, pointing toward the building. "Excellent. Could you please ask her to join us?" Thomas smiled. "Mr. Grant would very much like to thank you in person." "Thank me?" Sophia echoed, confused. Thomas simply nodded. "Yes, for the gift you gave him." Sophia's mind raced. A gift? She had nothing to give except the sandwich? Her pulse quickened as she led Thomas to Mrs. Clara's apartment. The world seemed to blur around her, the noise of the busy street fading as 1,000 questions flooded her mind. But above all, one thought echoed louder than the rest. Who was Alexander Grant really? Sophia stood beside Mrs. Clara Morrison, her heart racing. The lawyer, Thomas Caldwell, led them to a quiet spot in the apartment's dimly lit hallway. His polished shoes clicked against the worn tiles, a stark contrast to the peeling wallpaper and faint scent of mildew. "Mr. Alexander Grant has asked me to deliver a message to you, Sophia," Thomas began, his voice calm but formal. He is deeply grateful for the kindness you showed him just a few days ago." "Kindness?" Mrs. Clara frowned. "What is this all about?" Sophia's mind raced, flashes of that brief encounter in the park replaying in her head. The man with the tattered clothes, the deep blue eyes, the half sandwich. Could it be? I only gave him part of my lunch," Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible. "Sometimes the smallest acts have the greatest impact," Thomas replied with a gentle smile. "Mr. Grant has asked me to invite you and your legal guardian to visit his residence. He wishes to thank you properly." Mrs. Clara's eyes widened. "Visit? At his home? But why would a wealthy man want anything to do with a poor girl from this neighborhood?" "That is something, Mr. Grant wishes to explain himself," Thomas answered. "He has also arranged for a car to take you there." Sophia felt her heart pound faster. She looked at Mrs. Clara, who seemed overwhelmed, her hands nervously twisting the edge of her apron. "Well, I suppose we can go, can't we, Sophia?" Mrs. Clara finally said, trying to sound confident, but her voice wavered. Within minutes, a sleek black car pulled up outside their crumbling apartment building. Sophia and Mrs. Clara stepped in, their reflections distorted in the glossy exterior of the car. The seats were soft, the air smelled faintly of leather, and the driver nodded politely as the door closed. Sophia stared out the window, the familiar streets of her neighborhood slipping by. Graffiti-covered walls, broken streetlights, the weary faces of those hurrying home, all gave way to wide, tree-lined avenues and grand houses. It felt like a different world. "I don't understand this," Mrs. Clara murmured, her voice tinged with anxiety. "Rich people don't just invite us into their homes. It doesn't make sense." But Sophia was too engrossed in her own thoughts to answer. Why did Alexander want to see her? What could he possibly want to say? Soon, the car turned into a long, winding driveway. Massive iron gates swung open, and they entered a sprawling estate surrounded by manicured gardens. Flowers of every color lined the path, and a grand mansion loomed at the end. "My goodness, Mrs. E," Clara whispered, gripping Sophia's hand tightly. "This is like something out of a fairy tale." The car stopped, and a polite attendant opened the door for them. Thomas was already waiting at the entrance, his expression warm but professional. "Welcome, Mrs. Clara. Sophia," he greeted them. "Please, follow me." They were led through a grand foyer with marble floors that sparkled under a crystal chandelier. Sophia's eyes widened at the sight of the elegant paintings on the walls and the polished wooden staircase that seemed to reach up forever. But it was the man waiting for them in the cozy sitting room that captured Sophia's full attention. Gone were the tattered clothes and unkempt beard. Alexander Grant stood before them, dressed in a simple but well-tailored suit, his blue eyes just as piercing as she remembered. "Hello, Sophia," he greeted her with a warm smile. "And Mrs. Clara, thank you for coming." Sophia's mouth felt dry. You're the man from the park." "Yes," Alexander nodded. "And you are the girl who gave me her only food for the day." Mrs. Clara seemed to falter, trying to process what she was hearing. "But why? Why would a rich man like you pretend to be someone like that?" Alexander's smile softened. "Every year, I spend a few weeks living among those society forgets. It reminds me of where I came from and shows me who people truly are. Most ignore me, some are cruel. But Sophia, you showed me kindness without expecting anything in return." Sophia felt her cheeks flush, embarrassment mixing with awe. "It was just a sandwich." "It was a gesture of compassion," Alexander corrected gently. "Something more valuable than all the wealth I've accumulated." He gestured for them to sit, and the staff brought tea and delicate pastries. Mrs. Clara looked like she might faint, but she managed a polite smile. "I want to help you, Sophia," Alexander continued. "Not because I pity you, but because I see potential in you. You have a good heart, And in this world, that is more precious than gold. Sophia's eyes widened. Help me. How? We will discuss that soon, Alexander smiled. But first, I want you to know that simple act of kindness has already changed more lives than you can imagine. Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she sipped her tea, the delicate porcelain cup feeling out of place in her small calloused fingers. Mrs. Clara sat beside her, her wide eyes darting from the grand paintings on the walls to the glittering chandelier overhead. Everything in Alexander Grant's mansion seemed like a world away from their cramped, aging apartment. But it was Alexander's words that truly left them speechless. I want to help you, Sophia, Alexander repeated, his calm blue eyes meeting hers. Your kindness reminded me of something I had forgotten. When I was your age, I too had very little. I know what it means to have nothing, and how a simple act of compassion can mean everything. But we don't need charity, Mrs. Clara stuttered, her voice wavering. We get by. Sophia has always been a good girl. This is not charity, Alexander replied gently. This is an opportunity. Sophia's heart raced. What did he mean by opportunity? Mrs. Clara, Alexander continued, I have already spoken with a private clinic. They will provide full treatment for Sophia's grandmother, Rosa Reyes, all costs covered. Mrs. Clara's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes welling up with tears. Oh my goodness. Rosa will get the help she needs? Yes, Alexander confirmed with a gentle smile, and that is just the beginning. Sophia, I have arranged for you to attend one of the best schools in the city on a full scholarship. Your uniform, books, and all educational expenses will be covered. Sophia's mind spun. Her? A good school. She had never even dreamed of such a thing. But why? Sophia whispered. Why would you do all this for me? Because kindness should be recognized, Sophia, Alexander explained, leaning forward slightly. And because I believe that with the right support, you can become someone who changes lives, just like you changed mine. Mrs. Clara dabbed at her eyes with the corner of her apron, still struggling to grasp everything she was hearing. This is too much. It's not enough, Alexander insisted. Sophia, you have a bright mind, a strong spirit, and a heart full of kindness. I want to see you thrive. The rest of the afternoon felt like a dream. Sophia and Mrs. Clara were given a tour of the mansion, the vast gardens, the grand library filled with books Sophia could only dream of, the shimmering pool that stretched out behind the main building. But even as Sophia marveled at the beauty around her, a quiet voice in the back of her mind whispered questions. Why me? Why is he doing this? What does he expect in return? That night, back in their tiny apartment, Mrs. Clara was a whirlwind of joy, telling the neighbors how Sophia's kindness had touched the heart of a billionaire. But Sophia lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling. Could this all be true? Would her grandmother really get better? Could she truly attend a good school? The next morning, her questions began to find answers. A black car arrived outside their building. Sophia's grandmother, still frail but smiling, was carefully helped into the vehicle by the clinic's staff. Mrs. Clara clung to Sophia's hand, both of them waving as the car drove away, hope filling their hearts. Sophia's life began to change faster than she could understand. Her new school was a world of polished floors, tall ceilings, and well-dressed students. But it was also a place where whispers followed her. Isn't she the charity girl? Some murmured. The poor kid who got in because of Mr. Grant! Sophia kept her head down, trying to ignore the stares and the giggles. She focused on her studies, clutching her old patched backpack as if it were a lifeline. But it was in her literature class that Sophia found a small comfort. Missy. Olivia Carter, the literature teacher, was different. She didn't look at Sophia with pity or judgment. She smiled genuinely and spoke with warmth. Sophia, Would you mind staying for a moment after class, sirs? Carter asked one afternoon. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. Was she in trouble? Did she do something wrong? But when the other students had left, Miss Carter approached her with a kind smile. You have a way with words, Sophia. Your essays are thoughtful, and you write with such a strong voice. Have you ever thought about writing more? Writing? Sophia hesitated. I never thought anyone would want to read what I write. Well, I do, Ms. Carter assured her. And I think you have a lot to share. Would you be interested in some extra reading? I have a few books I think you might enjoy. Sophia's heart swelled. Yes, I'd love that. From that day on, Sophia would stay after class, borrowing books from Ms. Carter and discussing stories that took her far beyond the cracked streets of her neighborhood. And slowly, she began to believe that perhaps she wasn't just a charity case. Perhaps she was something more. Sophia quickly discovered that being the charity student at her new school came with challenges she had never imagined. The grand hallways, polished floors, and towering bookshelves were a world apart from the cracked sidewalks and crumbling walls of her old neighborhood. But it wasn't the elegant architecture or the expensive uniforms that made Sophia feel out of place. It was the whispers. Did you hear? She's here because of Mr. Grant. Her grandma's some sick old lady. Probably couldn't afford the medicine. Just another charity case. The words stung, each whispered remark feeling like a tiny cut. Sophia kept her head down, her fingers gripping the straps of her worn backpack. She tried to disappear in the crowded hallways, but the stares seemed to follow her everywhere. But despite the cold glances, Sophia excelled in her studies. She absorbed every lesson, her notebooks filling with meticulous notes. In literature class, she found a small refuge with Miss Olivia Carter, whose kind smile and gentle encouragement gave her a brief escape from the judgment around her. Sophia, did you finish the book I lent you? Miss Carter asked one afternoon, her voice warm. Yes, and I wrote something, Sophia admitted shyly, pulling a folded sheet of paper from her backpack. Miss Carter's eyes lit up. May I read it? Sophia nodded, her cheeks flushing as she watched Miss Carter's expression change curiosity, then surprise, and finally pride. This is beautiful, Sophia, Miss Carter whispered. You have a gift, with words. Sophia's heart swelled, but even the warmth of Miss Carter's praise couldn't completely shield her from the coldness of the other students. In the cafeteria, she often sat alone, her small lunch tucked in her lap. Sometimes she heard the snickers, the wealthy girls with their perfect hair, boys who spoke in loud, confident voices. But the worst came one rainy afternoon. Sophia had been sitting quietly at a corner table, reading a book Ms. Carter had given her. Rain tapped against the cafeteria windows, and most students were crowded inside, their laughter and chatter filling the room. Hey, charity girl! A sharp voice broke through the noise. Sophia looked up to see Melissa, a tall, blonde girl known for her sharp tongue, flanked by two of her friends. Enjoying your free lunch? Melissa sneered. I guess when you have nothing, even cafeteria food is a luxury. Laughter rippled through the crowd around them. Sophia's cheeks burned, but she kept her eyes on her book, trying to ignore them. Did your grandma have to beg Mr. Grant to take pity on you? Melissa continued, leaning closer. Or did you do something else to get his attention? Sophia's fingers clenched the pages of her book, her heart racing. She didn't know what to say, and her voice seemed to have vanished. But then a shadow fell over the table. That's enough, Melissa. Miss Carter's voice was calm but firm. The entire cafeteria seemed to quiet as the teacher stepped forward. Picking on someone doesn't make you strong. It just shows how weak you are, Ms. Carter continued, her gaze unwavering. Melissa's smile faded, and she muttered something under her breath before walking away, her friends following close behind. Sophia's eyes stung, but she blinked away the tears. Ms. Carter sat beside her, a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Don't ever let people like that make you forget who you are, Sophia," Ms. Carter whispered. "You have more courage and kindness in you than they could ever understand." That evening, as Sophia walked home under the grey, rain-soaked sky, her thoughts were a storm. She was grateful for Ms. Carter's support, but the pain of the insults lingered. Was this how it would always be? Would she always be the outsider? But as she turned the corner to her building, she saw a familiar figure waiting by the entrance, Mrs. Clara stood with an umbrella, her warm smile shining even through the rain. "There you are, dear," Mrs. Clara called, waving. "I made your favorite soup." Sophia felt a warmth spread through her chest. No matter how harsh the world seemed, she still had people who loved her. As they stepped inside, Mrs. Clara chatted about her day, and Sophia found herself smiling. But in the back of her mind, she remembered Mrs. Carter's words, "Don't let them make you forget who you are." That night, Sophia opened her notebook, the one Ms. Carter had given her, and with the soft glow of the bedside lamp, she began to write, not just words, but her feelings, her thoughts, her hopes. She didn't know it then, but those quiet, late-night words would one day become her voice. The voice that would change more lives than she could ever imagine. As the months passed, Sophia tried to find her place in the grand corridors of her new school. Her grades remained excellent, and her quiet resilience began to earn the respect of some teachers. But the whispers never completely disappeared, and while Mrs. Carter remained a beacon of encouragement, Sophia often felt like she was walking a tightrope between two worlds. But life outside of school was changing as well. Sophia's grandmother, Rosa, was receiving the best care at a private clinic, and her health was steadily improving. On weekends, Sophia would visit her, reading books aloud and sharing stories about her classes. Rosa would smile, her frail hands gently brushing Sophia's cheek. "You're growing so much, Sophia," she would whisper. "I'm so proud of you." But beneath the happiness of Rosa's recovery, there was a growing tension in the Grant household. Alexander Grant remained kind and supportive, but his son William was a different story. William Grant viewed Sophia's presence in his father's life with disdain. To him, she was just a charity project, a reminder of his father's weakness. He had never approved of his father's so-called social experiments, where Alexander would live among the poor to test the kindness of strangers. But this time was different. This time, Alexander hadn't just tested someone's kindness, he had brought that person into their lives. One chilly afternoon, Sophia arrived at the Grant mansion for her regular visit. The staff greeted her warmly, but as she made her way to the study, she overheard voices, angry voices. "This is ridiculous, Father. You can't just pick up a stray from the streets and turn her into your next pet project." William's voice was sharp and full of resentment. "She's not a project, William." Alexander's voice was calm but firm. "Sophia is a bright, kind young girl who deserves a chance." "A chance at what?" "Taking my place? Taking over your precious foundation?" William's laugh was bitter. "You're so busy playing savior that you don't see what's really happening." "Enough!" Alexander's tone grew cold. "Your jealousy is blinding you. This is not about you. It's about doing what's right." Sophia's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't want to hear anymore. Turning quietly, she stepped away, her fingers gripping the straps of her backpack. But as she moved to leave, she saw a familiar figure at the end of the hallway, Ms. Carter. "Sophia." Ms. Carter's voice was gentle, and her presence immediately brought a sense of calm. "Are you all right?" I shouldn't be here," Sophia whispered, her voice trembling. "William hates me. He thinks I'm just a problem." Ms. Carter placed a gentle hand on Sophia's shoulder. "People who fear losing something are often the ones who lash out the hardest. William sees your kindness, your potential, and he feels threatened. But that is his struggle, not yours. Sophia nodded, but her heart still felt heavy. Why did being given a chance have to come with so much pain? In the weeks that followed, Sophia noticed how William's disdain became more apparent. He would ignore her, speak coldly when they crossed paths, and once even commented that she should be grateful for the crumbs she received. But Sophia tried to rise above it. She focused on her studies, continued her conversations with Ms. Carter, and visited her grandmother whenever she could. But one day, as Sophia was leaving the library after staying late to study, she noticed something strange. William was in the corner of the room, speaking in hushed tones with a man she didn't recognize. They were leaning close, their faces serious. "Offshore accounts. Your father doesn't need to know. As long as the numbers match, no one will question it," the man whispered. William nodded, his expression cold. "Make sure it's done properly. I don't want anything leading back to me." Sophia's breath caught. Offshore accounts? Hiding something from Alexander? Was William involved in something illegal? She stepped back quietly, slipping behind a bookshelf just as William turned his head. Her heart raced, her mind a whirlwind. Should she tell Alexander? Would he even believe her? But then Mrs. Carter's voice echoed in her mind. Those who fear losing something often lash out, and William feared losing his father's legacy. That night, as Sophia lay in bed, her thoughts were a tangled web. William was hiding something dangerous. But she was just a girl. What could she do? Then she remembered Miss Carter's other words. Knowledge is power. Maybe she couldn't confront William directly, but she could learn. She could watch. And she could prepare. In that moment, Sophia decided. She would find out the truth about William, and she would protect Alexander no matter what it took. From that night on, Sophia's world became one of quiet observation. Every visit to the Grant mansion, every whispered conversation she overheard, and every passing glance from William became part of a puzzle she was trying to piece together. But Sophia knew she couldn't do this alone. So, she turned to the one person she trusted completely, Miss Carter. Miss Carter, I need your help, Sophia whispered one afternoon after class. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her fear. I think William is hiding something. Something serious. Ms. Carter's expression grew serious. She gestured for Sophia to close the classroom door, and they sat together in the quiet room, sunlight streaming through the tall windows. Tell me everything, Miss Carter urged gently. Sophia explained what she had overheard, the whispers of offshore accounts, the secretive meetings. Ms. Carter listened without interruption, her eyes never leaving Sophia's face. Sophia, she finally said, this is serious. But you must be careful. William is not just another student. He is a powerful man's son. I know, Sophia whispered. But if he's hurting Mr. Grant, I can't just stand by. Ms. Carter nodded, a quiet pride in her gaze. Then we will do this carefully. Knowledge is power, Sophia. We will learn everything we can. From that day forward, Sophia began her quiet investigation. Under Ms. Carter's guidance, she learned about financial terms, how to read documents, and how to look for signs of corruption. Miss Carter brought her books on accounting, economics, and corporate law, and Sophia devoured them all. But Sophia didn't just study. She also watched. Every time she visited the Grant mansion, she kept her ears open, noticing the hushed arguments between William and Alexander, the suspicious visitors who arrived when Alexander was away. One evening, as Sophia walked down the grand hallway, she noticed William's office door slightly ajar. His voice drifted out. We can't afford another delay. Just move the funds. No one will question it if we use the Foundation's accounts. Sophia's breath caught. The Foundation? Was he stealing from his father's charitable work? But she didn't have proof, not yet. Back at her small apartment, Sophia pored over her notes, the books Ms. Carter had given her scattered across her bed. Her grandmother, now much healthier, would sometimes watch from the doorway, a soft smile on her face. "You're always studying so hard, Sophia," Grandma Rosa would say, her voice full of pride. "Your future is so bright." But Sophia couldn't tell her grandmother the truth. She couldn't explain that beneath the pages of literature and history, she was also learning about fraud, money laundering, and financial manipulation. Miss Carter helped Sophia open a free online account where she could store her notes securely. Sophia began creating a digital folder filled with everything she had observed, dates, names, overheard conversations. She even began sketching a map of the Grant family's connections, marking which employees were close to William, which seemed loyal to Alexander. It wasn't long before she found something else. One rainy afternoon, as she helped organize books in Miss Carter's classroom, Sophia's phone buzzed. It was an email notification and update from one of the online courses she had been taking. Understanding Corporate Fraud. Course complete. Certificate attached. Sophia. Mrs. Carter smiled, glancing at the screen. "You've done it." "It's just a piece of paper," Sophia replied, though she couldn't hide the small smile on her face. "It's more than that," Ms. Carter insisted. "It's proof that you've become something extraordinary." But Sophia's smile faded as she looked out the window, raindrops streaking down the glass. "I just hope it's enough." One evening, Sophia's careful patience was rewarded. As she sat quietly in the grand library of the Grant mansion, pretending to read, she saw William enter, his phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care if he finds out. By the time he does, I'll be in control." Her pulse raced. Sophia watched as he opened a drawer in the desk, pulled out a folder, and began flipping through pages filled with numbers and signatures. When he left, Sophia approached the desk. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the drawer, finding the folder still warm from his touch. It was full of financial documents, transfers, investments, and what looked like money flowing out of the Foundation's accounts. This was it, the proof she needed. But as she stared at the pages, Sophia's heart pounded. What should she do? Show these to Alexander? But what if he didn't believe her? What if he thought she was just a troublemaker? Masit. Carter's words echoed in her mind. Knowledge is power. Taking a deep breath, Sophia pulled out her phone, quickly photographing each page. Then she carefully returned the folder exactly as it was. Back home, she uploaded the photos to her secure digital folder. As she stared at the screen, a cold determination settled over her. She had the truth, but she needed more. She needed a plan. Sophia knew that having proof was just the beginning. Her mind raced with thoughts and questions. What should she do next? Would Alexander believe her? Or would William find a way to twist the truth? She needed a plan, a way to ensure that the truth couldn't be ignored, no matter what William tried. And so, Sophia did what she had always done best. She learned. With Ms. Carter's guidance, she studied more about finance and corporate law. She learned how money could be hidden, how accounts could be manipulated, and how people like William used complex schemes to avoid detection. But she didn't just focus on books. Sophia also began paying closer attention at the Grant mansion. She noticed which employees seemed loyal to Alexander and which whispered in hushed tones whenever William was around. She listened, she watched, and she documented everything. One evening, while helping Ms. Carter organize her classroom, Sophia hesitated before speaking. "Miss Carter, I have enough proof to show Mr. Grant," she whispered. "But what if he doesn't believe me?" Miss Carter looked thoughtful. "Sometimes the truth is difficult to accept, especially when it involves someone you love." Sophia's heart ached. She knew Alexander loved his son, despite William's arrogance, but she couldn't let that blind him. "So, I need to make it undeniable," Sophia murmured, determination hardening her voice. "Miss..." Carter nodded. "You're a smart girl, Sophia. I trust you'll find a way." And Sophia did. She spent the next few weeks carefully gathering even more evidence. She listened to William's whispered conversations whenever she could. She photographed documents, recorded his phone calls from a distance, and tracked the flow of money using the skills she had learned. Then she went one step further. She quietly reached out to Thomas Caldwell, Alexander's trusted lawyer. But she didn't meet with him in person. Instead, she sent an anonymous email with an attachment summary of her findings, masked as a concerned employee. "Dear Mr. Caldwell, I am writing to inform you of potential financial misconduct involving Mr. William Grant. Attached are documents that may require your attention. Please ensure that Mr. Alexander Grant is made aware of this. A concerned friend." Sophia's hands shook as she sent the email, but she couldn't take any risks. If William found out she was behind this, he would do anything to silence her. Days passed. Sophia kept her head down, her anxiety growing with each passing hour. Had Mr. Caldwell received the email? Had he spoken to Alexander? Then one afternoon, Sophia was visiting the Grant mansion. She had just stepped into the grand hallway when she heard voices loud and angry. "What is the meaning of this, William?" Alexander's voice thundered, filled with a mix of shock and hurt. "Father, this is ridiculous. These are lies. Some coward is trying to ruin me." William's voice was desperate, but there was a tremor of fear beneath his anger. "These are your accounts." "Your signatures," Alexander shouted. "Funds stolen from the foundation. Secret investments in your name. How could you do this?" "I was trying to save your empire," William screamed back. "You're too blinded by your charity projects, throwing away money on people who will never amount to anything." Sophia's heart raced. She peeked around the corner, seeing the two men facing each other, Alexander's face pale with betrayal, William's twisted with desperation. "Those people, as you call them, are the reason I built this empire." Alexander's voice was cold. "They are the ones who taught me compassion when I had nothing. And you, my own son, have become everything I've always despised." "Fine," William spat, his voice venomous. "Believe what you want, but you'll regret this." He stormed out, nearly crashing into Sophia in his rage. But his eyes were wild, unfocused, and he didn't even notice her. Sophia's knees felt weak. She pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding. It was happening. Everything was happening. A hand gently touched her shoulder. Sophia turned to see Thomas Caldwell, his face calm but serious. "Sophia," he whispered, "it's time." He led her quietly through a side hallway and into Alexander's study. The older man stood by the window, staring out at the garden, his shoulders slumped. "Mr. Grant," Thomas spoke softly, "there is someone you should speak with." Alexander turned, his eyes weary. But when he saw Sophia, a mix of surprise and confusion crossed his face. "Sophia, what are you doing here?" Her voice trembled, but she stood tall. "I'm sorry, Mr. Grant, but you needed to know the truth." "Truth?" Alexander whispered, stepping closer. "It was me," Sophia admitted. "I sent the documents to Mr. Caldwell. I've been watching. I couldn't let William destroy everything you've built." Alexander stared at her, silent, his expression unreadable. Then slowly, he stepped forward and pulled Sophia into a gentle embrace. "You saved me," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "A second time." Sophia's tears fell freely, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of relief. And in that quiet, sunlit room, Sophia realized that she had done more than protect Alexander's legacy. She had protected his heart. In the days that followed, the fallout from William's betrayal shook the Grant family. News spread quietly among the mansion's staff, whispered in hushed tones behind closed doors. Alexander Grant's face seemed to age overnight, his once bright blue eyes shadowed with grief. But Sophia remained by his side. She never asked for anything, never demanded praise. She simply continued visiting the mansion, studying in the grand library, and sitting quietly with Alexander whenever he needed company. "You know, Sophia," Alexander murmured one evening, his voice soft and weary, "I always thought success meant building an empire. But now, I wonder, was it all just a house of cards?" "Not if it can be rebuilt," Sophia replied gently. "Sometimes things need to fall apart so they can be rebuilt stronger." Her words brought a faint smile to Alexander's face. He reached out, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You are wiser than I ever was at your age." As for William, his departure was swift and silent. Alexander had given him a chance to explain himself, to show remorse. But William's pride was too great. He packed his belongings and left the mansion in the middle of the night, his face twisted with anger and shame. "He will come to regret his choices," Thomas Caldwell remarked one afternoon, his voice calm but tinged with sadness. "But sometimes people must fall to learn how to stand." Sophia nodded, though her heart ached for Alexander. Losing a son, even one who had betrayed you, was a pain she couldn't imagine. But life didn't stop. Alexander knew he couldn't let the foundation he had built fall apart. And so, with Sophia's quiet encouragement, he began to rebuild. He called for an emergency meeting of the foundation's board. Many of the members were shocked to learn of William's actions, but Alexander's calm, steady leadership reassured them. He didn't try to hide the truth, he laid it bare, explaining that the foundation had been misused, but would be restored. "We will not be defined by one man's greed," Alexander declared. "We will be defined by our commitment to helping those in need." Sophia was there, sitting quietly at the back of the room. She watched as Alexander's strength returned, his voice gaining confidence with each word. And when the board members voted to support him, she felt a swell of pride. But Alexander didn't stop there. He turned to Sophia, his expression serious. "You have a gift, Sophia, a way of seeing the truth that others miss. Would you help me make sure this foundation truly changes lives?" Sophia's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm just a student." "A student who has more courage and integrity than most adults I know," Alexander replied with a smile. "You have already saved this foundation once. Help me protect it." From that day on, Sophia's life transformed. She was no longer just the girl who visited the mansion. She became an assistant to Alexander, learning about the foundation's projects, attending meetings, and even suggesting new initiatives. But she didn't forget where she came from. Sophia used her new position to advocate for scholarships for underprivileged students, funding for local clinics, and educational programs that taught financial literacy to struggling families. "You see the world differently," Alexander told her one day as they reviewed the latest project reports, "and that difference is your greatest strength." Sophia also continued her studies with Miss Carter, who remained her mentor and confidant. Together, they developed educational materials for the foundation, focusing on teaching young people how to navigate the world of money and opportunities. But even as Sophia's world expanded, she never forgot the one person who had always been her anchor. "Grandma Rosa," she whispered one evening, sitting by the old woman's bedside. I don't know if I can do all of this." Rosa's gentle hand rested on Sophia's. "You have always been strong, my Sophia. Kindness is your strength. Never forget that." Tears filled Sophia's eyes. "But what if I make mistakes? Then you will learn, just as you always have." Sophia leaned forward, hugging her grandmother, the familiar scent of her old blanket filling her senses. No matter how high she climbed, this was her true home, her true strength. The months turned into years, and Sophia's impact grew. The foundation expanded, reaching more communities, providing more scholarships, and changing more lives. Sophia's name became known not just as Alexander Grant's assistant, but as a young leader in her own right. One crisp autumn morning, as Sophia walked through the bustling halls of the Foundation's main office, she paused before a large framed photograph, a simple black and white image of a girl handing a sandwich to a weary-looking man on a park bench. Her own face, Alexander's, before she knew who he really was. Beneath the photo, a small plaque read, "Compassion is the foundation of all true wealth." Sophia smiled, her heart full. She had come so far, but her journey was just beginning. Years passed, and Sophia Reyes became a name known not just within the walls of the Grant Foundation, but across the city. Her work with the foundation grew, transforming it into a beacon of hope for underprivileged families, scholarships for talented but struggling students, healthcare for those without insurance, financial literacy programs. Sophia's ideas became reality. But while her life flourished, another life seemed to wither in the shadows. William Grant had vanished from the world of wealth and prestige. News of his betrayal and his fall from grace had spread, and many of his former friends turned their backs on him. Stripped of his position and inheritance, William lived in a modest apartment on the city's outskirts. The sleek suits and luxury cars were gone. In their place were second-hand clothes and a rusty old car that barely started most mornings. Bitterness became his constant companion. He blamed his father, he blamed Sophia, and he even blamed himself, though he would never admit it aloud. His pride wouldn't let him. Instead, he spent his days nursing his anger, clinging to the belief that he had been wronged. But fate has a way of humbling even the proudest souls. One rainy afternoon, as William trudged through the wet streets, his coat soaked and his shoes squelching with each step, he noticed a familiar sight, a group of children gathered outside a community center. Laughter filled the air, and a large banner above the entrance read, "Grant Foundation Youth Program." William's jaw tightened. His name, his family's name, now represented a cause he had once mocked. Yet something pulled him closer. He stood outside, watching as a young woman addressed the children with a warm smile. Sophia. She had grown even more confident, her voice clear and kind, her energy infectious. The children listened to her eagerly, and even the parents standing nearby looked at her with admiration. "Remember, your voice matters," Sophia was saying. "Never let anyone tell you that your dreams are too big." William's fists clenched. How could she stand there using his family's name as if she belonged? But beneath his anger was something else, something he didn't want to admit. Shame. He turned to leave, but at that moment, Sophia's voice called out. "Excuse me, sir, can I help you?" William froze. He hadn't expected her to notice him. For a moment, he considered walking away, pretending he was just another passerby. But then he saw the recognition in her eyes. "William," Sophia whispered, her voice soft with shock. It's been a long time." "Too long," William muttered, forcing a bitter smile. "I see you've done well for yourself, living the dream." "It's not a dream, it's hard work," Sophia replied calmly. "But I'm grateful for the chance I was given." "The chance you stole," William shot back, his voice sharper than he intended. "You played the saint, the savior, while I lost everything." Sophia's expression didn't waver. "You lost everything because you chose lies and greed, William." "Not because of me." His anger flared, but it quickly faded, leaving only a hollow ache. He looked away, his shoulders slumping. "I had it all, and I threw it away." "We all make mistakes," Sophia said, her voice softer now. "But what matters is what you do next." William scoffed. "What can I do now? I'm nothing. You're still William Grant, Sophia insisted. That name can mean something good if you choose to make it so. For the first time in years, William felt a tear sting his eye. He quickly looked away. And what? You're going to forgive me? After everything? Forgiveness isn't a gift you earn. It's a choice I make, Sophia replied. And I choose to forgive you. But you have to decide what you want to do with your life now. William stood there, the rain soaking his clothes, his vision blurring. I don't know how. Then let me help, Sophia offered, extending a hand. Not because I owe you anything, but because I believe in second chances. William hesitated, staring at her hand. His pride screamed at him to walk away, but pride had already cost him everything. Slowly, he reached out, his trembling fingers gripping Sophia's. Thank you, he whispered, his voice barely audible. From that day on, William began volunteering at the Grant Foundation. At first, it was just small tasks, sorting donations, organizing events. But as weeks turned into months, he found a strange sense of peace in the work. He saw the faces of the children who benefited from the Foundation's programs, and he began to understand what his father had once tried to teach him. And Sophia? She never brought up the past, never reminded William of his betrayal. She treated him with quiet kindness, just as she had always done. One evening, as they finished packing supplies for a new outreach program, William turned to Sophia. You really are something else, Sophia, he murmured. I used to think kindness was weakness, but now I see it's the strongest thing of all. Sophia smiled, her heart warm. Kindness is a choice, William. And so is forgiveness. And in that simple room filled with cardboard boxes and hope, William Grant began to rebuild not just his reputation, but his heart. The years that followed were a testament to the power of redemption, forgiveness, and unwavering kindness. Sophia Reyes continued to lead the Grant Foundation, her influence growing beyond even Alexander's expectations. Under her leadership, the foundation expanded its reach, providing scholarships, healthcare, and job training to thousands. But Sophia never forgot where she came from. The small, cramped apartment she had once shared with Grandma Rosa became a memory she cherished, a reminder of how far she had come. And while the world saw her as a young leader with a brilliant future, Sophia remained humble, her heart always open to those in need. Alexander Grant, though older now, continued to guide Sophia, his pride in her evident in every conversation. He often watched her speak at events, her voice clear and passionate, her words touching the hearts of everyone who listened. She is more than I ever dreamed she could be, Alexander would say to Thomas Caldwell, his trusted lawyer. She is the daughter I never knew I needed. But perhaps the greatest surprise was William. After years of struggling with his guilt and bitterness, William had found a place within the foundation, not as an executive, but as a mentor. He worked directly with young people, sharing his story, warning them of the dangers of pride and greed. His fall from grace had become a lesson that inspired others. One sunny afternoon, as Sophia walked through the bustling foundation's main office, she saw William sitting with a group of teenagers. He was laughing, his once hardened face now softer, his voice filled with warmth. You see, he was saying, it's not about how much you have, but what you do with it. And trust me, I learned that the hard way. Sophia smiled, her heart swelling with quiet pride. William had not just found redemption, he had found purpose. You're making a difference, she said as she approached him later. William looked up, his expression sincere. Thanks to you, I never would have changed if you hadn't given me a chance. Everyone deserves a second chance, Sophia replied. I learned that from Mr. Grant. But Alexander's health was beginning to decline. Age and the weight of his years finally caught up to him, and soon he spent more time resting at home. Sophia visited him often, bringing reports, sitting by his bedside, and listening to his stories about his youth, about his struggles, his dreams, and his regrets. "I always thought money was the answer," Alexander confessed one quiet evening. "But it was never the money, Sophia. It was the kindness, the humanity we give to one another. That's the real wealth." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "You taught me that." In his final days, Alexander passed peacefully, surrounded by Sophia, William, and the Foundation's staff who had become like family. His funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives he had touched, directly or through the foundation he built. Sophia stood before the crowd, her voice steady but filled with emotion. Alexander Grant was more than a philanthropist. He was a man who believed in second chances, a man who saw the value in every person, even when they could not see it in themselves. After the service, William stood beside Sophia, his gaze distant. "He saved me, you know," he whispered. "In the end, even after everything I did, he still saved me." "That was his gift," Sophia replied, "and now it's our responsibility to continue his legacy." With Alexander gone, Sophia became the official director of the Grant Foundation, but she never let the title change who she was. She continued to walk through the crowded neighborhoods, talking to children, listening to their stories, and reminding them that they were seen, that they mattered. One rainy evening, as she left the Foundation's office, Sophia noticed a young girl standing alone by the entrance. Her clothes were worn, her face streaked with rain, but her eyes were bright. "Are you okay?" Sophia asked gently, holding out an umbrella. The girl looked up, surprised. I got lost." "Come inside," Sophia offered. "We'll help you." And just like that, another life was changed. Back in her office, Sophia paused before a familiar framed photograph, a simple image of a girl handing half a sandwich to a weary-looking man on a park bench, the same photograph that had become the Foundation's symbol. Sophia touched the glass, her voice soft. "Thank you, Mr. Grant, for everything." Outside, the rain continued to fall, but Sophia's heart was warm, because she knew that as long as there were people in need, as long as there were hands reaching out in kindness, Alexander's legacy would live on, and so would hers. In the story of Sophia Reyes, powerful lessons of kindness, forgiveness, and resilience shine through. Sophia's journey began with a simple act of compassion, sharing half of her sandwich with a stranger. What seemed like a small, insignificant gesture became the spark that transformed her life and the lives of many others. This story reminds us that even the smallest acts of kindness can create a ripple effect, changing the world in ways we may never see. For older audiences, it is a gentle reminder that it is never too late to make a difference, to forgive, and to choose compassion over resentment. Sophia's kindness not only transformed her life, but also redeemed those around her, including William, who found a second chance because someone believed in him. In our own lives, we often underestimate the impact of our words and actions. But like Sophia, we can choose to lead with kindness, extend forgiveness, and be a source of hope to others. Because true wealth is not measured by what we have, but by what we choose to share.